My name is Benjamin Sarkozy. I'm a German entrepreneur and also investor. My background, or let's say the thing that I've been doing for the last couple of years, is graphite. I've been involved as a CEO of a graphite company. It's called GS Europe. We are part of a worldwide group, which is one of the biggest exporters of graphite in the world. We handle around and move around 30,000 metric tons annually, mostly from China, but also from the US. And then we sell this graphite on every continent that you have. We have warehouses everywhere, offices. We have worldwide sales team, and we have deep relationships to the end user markets. Be it, for example, the metallurgical markets like heat treatment, steel mills, which of course still consume over 50% of all graphite worldwide and will be doing so in the foreseeable future. And also we are into the new markets, if you want to call them like this, the emerging. Now they are not so emerging anymore. They have been emerging like a couple of years ago, but now they are considered, of course, the future, and that is the electromobility and semiconductor industries, and also solar panels, and of course, what will also be again a market will be the defense industry. Okay, but anyway, so electromobility is of course where our heart and our soul is placed right now, and this is the future, and this is something that my Europe is very involved with, and I'm a happy non-executive director and advisor to Savala, the platform, and Sasha's company. I really like the concept of providing a platform here, which in which you can really see ESG, the principles of ESG, sustainability, for in terms of the value chain, the supply chain also, really, which has an important aspect or an important mission in the market, because as you might know that most of these sources, or let's say the supply chain, is not always very transparent to a buyer sitting, for example, in Europe, because it goes many hands, right? Graphite, and sometimes it comes from a place in the world which could be considered politically risky, or unsustainable, and yeah, and this is why I believe that Savala is important here.
So it's a relatively recent history where, you know, the value of graphite is what it is, right? I mean, you know, obviously it can be tied to the development of technology, batteries especially, and to your point, you touched on China playing a huge role. So the ability to check the boxes that you talked about on ESG, but also transparency, also you know, high quality, requires a couple of things. It seems it requires diverting the, let's call it not the monopoly on graphite in China, but also getting into other parts of the world, but also getting technology involved. Talk about why it's important to, and Savala specifically is important in terms of helping achieve that goal for people that are really interested in high quality graphite.
Okay. You mean when it comes to technology, I guess? Yeah,
yes.
the technology itself. Okay. So in terms of the technology, I mean, graphite is a material, an industrial mineral that is considered a commodity by many, right? However, it really goes into so many different industries. I believe that around 200 to 300 applications have been identified for natural graphite specifically. Okay, we're not even talking about only synthetic graphite, but natural graphite, because this is what Savala is all about, sustainable graphite. And so it can be going into so many different applications. It is also the main driver of this lithium ion, as I would call it, battery transition or evolution, or maybe even revolution that is driving the electric mobility market right now. So graphite is and will be also in the foreseeable future, because there is no real alternative to graphite, will be the main, or besides lithium, the main ingredient in batteries, and is therefore driving this whole transition to electromobility. When it comes to the mix in those batteries, so normally what we talk about, or what's in the public domain, let's say, most of the time is really lithium. You might know that lithium, 8% of lithium comes from China, approximately. However, in terms of graphite, that is much more. So in terms of graphite, we're talking about over 40%. Some people say, because we are lacking in the West, in so-called Western world, we are lacking behind in terms of really battery active graphite. So some people say it's up to 70%. Graphite comes actually from China, which in itself creates huge demand and supply problems, gaps for production in the US or in the Americas and the Europe. So from this point of view, Savala fulfills an important gap here, because Savala, first of all, the grain sizes, okay, the material itself, the raw material that is here, that is provided and that is offered, is such that you can have a wide variety of different industries or different applications, whatever you want to call it, at the end of the day, that you can serve, especially relevant, of course, for two markets, which I believe are important. First of all, the electromobility market, for which it is, for which the mix, let's say, of available grain sizes is very interesting. And second of all, which is also an interesting market, a growing market, is the so-called fire retardant slash fireproof market. What is that? That is, we call it expandable graphite. So it's a graphite mix which goes into construction materials, construction chemicals, for example, which have fire retardant properties. A market which is overlooked, I would say. However, it grows by around 10 to 12% each year, and now especially relevant with new regulations. So I hope this answers at least part of your question, Richard. If not, of course, I can provide more depth.
No, I mean, that's excellent, because that's not something, I think, first of all, adding the part about the fire retardant, fireproof, I think that would surprise even pretty savvy investors. I don't know how many people really understand that potential application and that potential growth market for graphite. So I think that's really important. You've been, you've been around this for a while. You understand it as well as anybody. Then why specifically does somebody in your position, with a really sophisticated understanding of the current and future value of the graphite market, identify Savala as something that you say, okay, well, that's what I want to be part of? Again, I'm a busy person. I got a lot of things going on. What is it about that connection between that platform, that's sort of the blockchain technology, and underwriting it essentially with real graphite from Sri Lanka. What was super attractive to you about that entire value proposition?
Yeah, so it's the mix, really. It's the whole. First of all, and I think this is the most important reason, I guess, also for investors to become part of this, is that for political reasons, I mean, all the graphite available, as I just alluded to, 70%, up to 70% of the raw materials comes from China currently, which is okay for many, let's say, heat treatment applications, metallurgy applications, let's call them the traditional markets, which is still fine because there is not really a supply-demand problem for those. It's more about these very cutting-edge technologies that we're talking about, like the lithium-ion batteries, right? Where there's a lot of anxiety in the market right now from the point even of the graphite traders, okay, and also, of course, of customers, which believe that there could be potential danger in sourcing material from China in the future. Okay, as I said, with a focus on electromobility, it's that because as what we are seeing also right now is happening in terms of the cars, right? So in terms of the competition facing European or American manufacturers, Chinese BYD, for example, entering the European market right now. We see this as a potential danger when it comes even to the raw materials. So this is the first part. So Sri Lanka as a primary source or for Savala is very important here and will be important in the future to come. This is the first thing. The second thing is that, as you might know, there are projects in the Western world, and let me just right now, for the sake of for the discussion, count Sri Lanka also into the Western world. Okay, there are different projects that my company also has looked into from a trading point of view, of course, that seem to be feasible in the world. So, for example, in Brazil or other continents also, even Europe, Africa. However, the biggest problem is to bring these mining projects from pre-feasibility or even earlier stage to actually mining. Okay, so you would actually think, hey, pretty easy, you identify a source and then tomorrow you can already start producing. No, it's not like this. It takes years, sometimes even decades, until you can really bring it to a production stage. And in terms of Savala, this has been secured for the M1 mine very recently. So it's not only a feasible project, it's also a project that starts to produce tangible products. So this is also very important in terms of timing. So this will make the project attractive for both for investors, but also for traders or end users, and especially for this blossoming, thriving energy markets like electromobility, because they are looking to, what are the projects available. They evaluate these projects, they vet these projects, they see which are the ones that are online and which are the ones that still need a couple of years. And of course, the sooner they can start to work with a mine, the bigger the synergy. So the greater also the capability of the mine to expand production. So this is really an important factor, so timing. And then last but not least, which is more a personal thing for me also, I'm as I also alluded to, an investor. I'm always looking for green or sustainable projects. And I found the approach, the blockchain approach, very interesting. And as per my knowledge, in the terms of graphite, it has never been done or even approached, even tried yet. So I found this very innovative. And I know that the team behind Savala is very knowledgeable, also from financial point of view, right? I mean, these people are really sophisticated when it comes to finance technology. Let's put it this way. Sorry, I forgot the word for that. So from this point of view, I think really that this is an interesting platform.
And so when you touched earlier a little bit on the difference between, synthetic graphite and natural graphite. And, I'm sure some investors, in the end, they're just looking at the numbers. They don't fully understand all the ramifications that, that ripple out from that, including some of the stuff you talked about politically. Talk about the difference that you foresee in the value of pure natural graphite versus synthetic graphite going forward.
Okay. So it's a very interesting question, because when we look at the geographic differences of battery producers, and I believe it comes down really to availability of raw materials. So traditionally speaking, you have this distinction between synthetic and natural graphite, with synthetic graphite being the more costly material. However, the pure material, very pure in terms of any byproducts or any by-elements, which you don't want, of course, in battery applications. So you want the very high purity of graphite. And it really comes down to, let's say, geographical differences. So as I said, synthetic graphite, more expensive, but more pure in a let's say, a basic modification. However, when you look at natural graphite, a little bit cheaper, relatively speaking, of course, but more sustainable, because synthetic graphite, as you might know, needs a pretty energy-intense process, a so-called graphitization process, which is done at very high electricity consumption. So the problem always facing, let's say, battery makers was that they had to decide on a mix of synthetic and natural graphite, with synthetic graphite being relatively expensive, but easier to process. On the other hand, in some regions in the world, it's quite difficult to get enough natural graphite, which you can bring to a high purity level, because natural graphite, as you might know, you need to go through certain purification steps. So what we saw is that in Europe, all these emerging graphite users, lithium-ion manufacturers or users, they preferred, so far, they have preferred the synthetic route a little bit more, compared to, let's say, the pure natural graphite route. However, there is this mindset shift that they would like to go for natural graphite in a short while, because of what we just discussed, that it's more environmentally friendly compared to synthetic graphite. However, the natural graphite was not readily available. Because of what we just discussed, because there were not that many mines around, plus the ones that are around are in, I would not say in the hands, but they are already occupied let's put it this way, by Chinese manufacturers, and they are integrated in actually a Chinese supply chain, and not readily available for, let's say, European or American manufacturers.
So how, like, you touched on the word earlier, revolutionary, right? And because the convergence of all the things that you're talking about in this particular time do seem pretty historic, right? Like, you're talking about, for a long time, the availability wasn't there of certain types, the technology wasn't there, the transparency wasn't there, and now all of a sudden this move potentially away from China and into, Sri Lanka in this case, and a platform like Savala. I mean, I don't want to overstate things, but it sounds like this could have a very significant sort of tipping point effect on the graphite markets. Is that a fair assumption?
This can have, of course. This is for sure. This is for sure. I mean, with all what's happening out there, okay, and pretty recently actually, and I don't have the data in mind, but there have been significant shifts, let's say, in terms of the supply or the restrictions there on the supplies from China in the very recent history. So we're talking about the last couple of months, which have shown, let's say, protectionism, or to put it this way, a complication of getting graphite out of China and export this into Europe or the Americas. So in other words, Savala, the mines in Sri Lanka, of course, also mines in other parts of the world outside China. For them, it's a huge opportunity, and of course, for everyone interested to put money or put an investment into that, it's a very interesting opportunity because of what's happening out there. Whether you think from political point of view this is good or bad, it's difficult to say, but when it comes to the opportunity itself, seeing it as a pure financial or investment opportunity, I think it's great. Yeah. And it's also what's needed for the supply chain.
What would you say in terms of forecasting, pricing, going forward? And obviously, it's always hard to put the crystal ball out there, but you would be as immersed in this space as anyone. What are you comfortable saying in terms of where you forecast this market and the pricing?
Yeah. So it's quite interesting. The pricing with the further restrictions, of course, of exporting graphite, natural graphite from China. And we are always talking about natural, right? So we're not talking about synthetic graphite here. So with, of course, more and more tight restrictions, the price of the available graphite will go up. So this is for sure. We cannot say at this point how dramatic the shift will be, because it also depends a little bit on the electric vehicle markets. I mean, we have seen, of course, a few changes or a few struggles for some of the manufacturers in the last couple of weeks. For example, with Tesla in the media. However, I have the feeling that Europe, also the US, might impose import restrictions on Chinese cars in the near future, which then will, of course, make or will create an opportunity for European or American manufacturers of such vehicles. And they, of course, will have the need or the willingness only to buy graphite, which is available in the Western world or Sri Lanka in this case. So in other words, there will be a shift of the whole supply chain, redirecting the stream of goods, if you will, from China towards other sources in the world, including, of course, also Sri Lanka.
And let's just finally on that, let's zoom in a little further, because in truth, there's a lot of we could speculate all day about where markets are going to go, and without a crystal ball, it's always a bit of a dicey proposition. But to your point, what isn't dicey, because we've already seen the legislation and the mandates, around the world of mandating electric cars by 2030, whether it's in North America, whether it's in Europe, so what we do know definitively is that there's a short enough time period between where we're at now and the next 5 to 10 years where most governments around the world are going to be mandating the type of the vehicles that you're talking about, and therefore you're talking about a pretty massive increase in the demand for the type of graphite that you guys with Savala have access to. I mean, how accurate is that?
I mean, of course. So I would wish to have the very accurate view of what prices are going to be. However, so my company and let's say the Western trading houses or even manufacturers, they are, for them, this opportunity that is presented in these changes, also legislation, present, of course, the biggest opportunity there is in terms of graphite altogether. I mean, we are coping normally. We graphite guys, we are normally working with very cyclical markets, meaning that when we look into, for example, steel, right? This is a market that that can be bullish. That can also be a bear market, right? However, at the moment, we are really looking towards let's say a whole decade of growth within the electric vehicle space. So I can, of course, not forecast what is going to happen 2040, 50, right? but one thing's for sure, that this decade, and let's just put the year zero today, okay? This decade that is now going to start while we are speaking is going to be electric. There's no way around that.
And therefore, proper to make the assumption then that by extension, it's the graphite decade going forward. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. With all the technology that we have in our days, that we have right now, this is the fair assumption to make. No alternative to that route right now.
And so if you're talking to potential investors and you're in a room finally and they're saying to you and their hands are up, then why Savala in terms of what's available? You talked about China, you talked about all the issues, whatever, but speak just specifically about the value proposition of this combination of, because it feels like a potential game changer for commodities in general. And also feels like a game changer for the crypto world that lacked that sort of solid thing behind the tokens. How revolutionary do you think the combination is between the type of graphite that you're talking about in Sri Lanka and the platform of Savala?
Yeah, okay. I cannot say so much about the technology behind the platform. So I'm a graphite guy, if you will. So I hope someone else, and I'm pretty sure someone else can answer you this question in a better way, let's say. However, so I find it very innovative from a standpoint that graphite needs a transparent supply chain, and I'm not speaking, as a trader here of graphite. I'm more seeing this from the eyes of my customers, my clients, because I know that they are looking for such a solution. In fact, if you are talking to a bigger OEM, for example, the first question that you always get is, where's it from, right? Where's it from? If you answer it's from country X and they don't like country X especially for political reasons, then you are out. There will be no second question anymore. So you're not even getting to the topic of quality, okay? Which of course is also very important, right? But this is always the first question that you're getting. And then if you make it through this first question, they are going to ask you, okay, who is involved? So what is actually the mine, or who is the miner here in this case? If you don't want to answer that question for whatever reasons, you're also out. Okay, they throw you out of this, this short list of potential suppliers. And then you need, of course, to demonstrate that the practices are sustainable, because European and also American manufacturers, they need to make sure for their investors that that everything that happens within the value chain is transparent and is also ESG friendly. So from this point of view, I think this is the perfect solution, what is offered through Savala here, because it really encompasses all these points that I saw always as an obstacle, and where not only our company, but also, of course, other graphite companies really received objections in the past, let's say, from the OEMs.
So perfect. That's a great way to end, because that was a great summary of why it's the perfect solution to those problems and barrier to entry, to your point, when you can't get through those first 3 questions. So that's great stuff.